Hi, I'm Mark Mazzaferro, Public Information Officer for the City of Vacaville, and with me today is our Public Works Director, Steve Hartwig, and Steve has brought a guest. Steve, why don't you introduce our guest today?
Okay, this is Patrick Kinney, who is our Public Works Operations Manager and deals with a lot of the things regarding maintenance out in the field.
That's right, and the reason Patrick is here, and you're here, of course, is because we're going to talk about what happened in December with our recent rainstorms. Now, I know everybody's going to say, Mark, it's a beautiful sunny day, hasn't rained in a month. Why are we going to talk about flood preparation and what we do when there's flooding? Well, because hopefully it's going to rain again someday, and it's a key mission of Public Works, along with all the other things you do, is keep our streets and our city safe from issues like flooding. So why don't you just kind of generally talk about what kind of flood preparations Public Works does, throughout the year and leading up to winter and storm season.
Okay. When you get into the fall, as you know, we start losing leaves. They start falling on the ground into the streets and clogging up storm drains. So a lot of the work that we did initially was to do extra street sweeping, picking up leaves, clearing them out of the way, checking our storm drain system to make sure that for the most part it was clear and clean. We have specialty areas that we know can be problems, and we check those in advance to make sure that there aren't any problems that we have to look forward to. And we make sure that our storm patrol is lined up and everybody knows what their area is and what their responsibility is in those situations.
The storm patrol, talk about those guys. What do they do? There are people that actually cruise around town?
They have certain locations that they're assigned to. Mm-hmm. I'll go ahead and let Pat elaborate on that because he's the one that manages the crews and the teams that go out and do the work.
Okay.
Yes, our storm patrol, we have divided the city into 12 zones. Each zone has an individual that patrols that area. In addition, we have crews that also are available to patrol the area if there's an incident where one person cannot handle the situation. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And we have reserve people that will back up those people if someone's on vacation or sick.
So I'm guessing the storm patrol, well, when does the storm patrol officially go into action? I'm guessing July. They're not very busy.
No, prior to the winter season or the rain season, mm-hmm. We're doing preliminary work with permitted works in our creeks for drainage conveyance. Once we get into the winter season, we then start put together the storm patrol with the current staff we have, assign those areas so they could get familiar with the particular area, and monitor the weather on a continuous basis.
Now, these guys and gals that are out there, most of them have done this before, I'm guessing, right? It's not like my first time dealing with a storm or with a creek, or they have some experience.
Correct. The staff is assigned generally the same areas year after year, so they know the particular issues that occur in that section of the city that they're assigned to.
Now, you managed to sneak in drainage conveyance, and I appreciate that. That's I just heard that phrase today, and I love it. It's government at its best, drainage conveyance, which we would just call runoff or whatever. But
it means water running in the creeks.
Exactly. I love it. It's up there with mitigation. I love that word. You got to mitigate this situation. So let's talk about what happened in December, because we kind of got put on high alert. Our EOC got to level 1 activation, which basically means the various department heads associated with disaster or storm or emergency response got together and started talking about what we're going to do to get ready for this major storm that was coming into our area.
Right. Well, we had the storm was predicting both significant winds as well as then a large amount of rain following that. And again, knowing that the leaves tend to cause a lot of problem because they block gutters, we made sure that we had extra sweepers running just prior to and during the initial stages of the storm to make sure we could pick up whatever we could. As Pat has talked about, the storm patrol group was on alert. They operate 24/7 when necessary, and then we make sure that all of our technology that helps us monitor this keeps us up to date. Our stream gauges, our rain gauges, because the water that actually really is the most problem for Vacaville is what falls in the hills up above us and then comes down the creek.
Right, and glad you mentioned the rain and stream gauges, because those are on our website available to the public. If they want to monitor what's happening, there's 3 or 4 creek stream gauges and a couple of rainfall gauges, and it's almost up to the minute. So it's a great way to see what's happening out there. It's on our website.
Right.
So anyway, I'm sorry, go on.
In fact, the Mount Vaca rain gauge gives us a real good idea of how much water is going to be coming down Alamo Creek and to some extent Ulatis Creek, and those are the two, the two main ones through the bulk of the city. And Alamo, as you know, has been a problem in the past. It's the one that we're monitoring most closely, and the one that we try and make sure the creekways are clear, or as clear as possible, so that the water can get through.
So when the storm finally got here and it was pouring rain and it rained hard and it rained for a while, all in all, things worked pretty well. We didn't really have any major issues, did we?
No, things worked well. We monitored the gauges, as you mentioned. There were visual crews going out and doing visual inspection on things that were happening, making sure there wasn't anything that occurred during the storm itself to cause problems. And Pat can talk a little bit more, I think, about the specifics of what the crews did and how long they had to operate in storm patrol mode.
Right. Just prior to the storm, crews had done their checks of all the areas. We had both chippers lined up ready to go, as well as our backhoes and 10-wheelers. Were all equipped, had equipment checks and fueled up for the storm patrol the storm that was expected on December 8th. As calls came in, we continued to respond to those for localized flooding, as well as trees. Both private and public trees that fall down. We respond to those to maintain public safety in roadways and public travel way.
Now I know there were 2 or 3 trees that fell down that I heard about. One was not an issue. I mean, it was something that didn't need to be dealt with right away. The other one was over by Gibson Canyon Road. Why don't you talk about that one? That was kind of cool. in a kind of a sick government disaster preparedness kind of way.
Well, once a tree falls down and it blocks the public travel way, whether it's the street or sidewalk or even bike paths, we go out there, whether it's public or private, and remove it from a safety hazard. Okay, this includes trimming up the branches, putting them in the trip, and off-hauling debris. Many times it's just cutting the tree up and moving the logs out of the way so that they're no longer a safety issue.
Right, those guys got out there and they had the big truck with the big high-powered chipper. They had chainsaws. There were like 7 or 8 guys just swarming all over that thing, and it got taken care of quickly. The police were there. I don't know if fire showed up, but directing traffic, so there was still traffic flowing.
Right.
And the impact was, dare I say it, minimal on the community. What could have been really bad was actually worked out pretty well for us.
And that's the goal of Public Works, is to try and minimize or eliminate impact to the public. That's what we're trying to do with responding to these kinds of situations. And if they're going to be an impact, keep the time frame that it's an impact as short as possible.
All right. So as I said at the outset, it's sunny right now. I mean, there's no rain in the forecast for the next week or two. So everybody's relaxing and we're not worried and everything's going to be fine, right?
No, we're always taking a look at the creeks and the storm drain systems. If we've had work orders from a backlog where we haven't been able to get to those yet, we try and get those taken care of, knowing that there's still a good possibility between now on through the spring that there could be some pretty decent, significant storms that could still work their way through Vacaville.
Well, what I think longtime folks know this, newer residents to Vacaville probably don't. Usually our rainiest months are January and February and into March. So while the December storm was nice, historically that's just the beginning of the rainy season, the wet season for us. Most of our problems happen when we have them, if we're going to have them January, February into March.
Right.
So while we've had people call and say, what do I do with all these sandbags? The best advice is keep them.
Keep them.
Don't get rid of them yet,
Right.
and because the possibility exists you might need them again.
Right. Heavier rains in the late winter and early spring are pretty prevalent for our area. The warmer, moister air tends to come through. It puts a lot more water on the ground, and then ultimately through the creeks and out to the ocean. So.
But the good news is too, because we have a little break here, the ground's not saturated, which is always a problem. The longer it rains, the more saturated the ground gets. That's when you start having the water, not going into the ground, going into the storm, backing up. Issues. So it's kind of working to our advantage.
It is one of the worst situations to have a series of smaller storms that saturate the ground and then a big one right on the heels of that, where there's no place for the water to go but through the channel, and there's a lot more water when it does that, and it has a tendency to then get out of control and outside the systems that we have to take care of it.
Well, I can honestly say over the last 7 or 8 years, it's there's clearly been an effort to keep flooding to a minimum. It's a priority for the city.
It is. In fact, the city has constructed a couple of detention basins with a number of others planned that we're still working on. Those have been put in place, and that may have been why December didn't even look as bad as we thought it was going to be, because those systems functioned. The basins held the water that they were supposed to, and allowed the creek to manage its way through a fairly heavy couple of rainstorms.
Good deal. Anything else you want to share or talk about regarding flood preparation or storm preparation, or anything else happening in public works we should be aware of?
Well, just we always encourage citizens, as you mentioned, if you've got sandbags, hang on to them. Make sure you have your 3-day kit, so that if it's harder to get in and out of your house,
Disaster
the roads get
kit.
full. Make sure that you've got that and some supplies so that you can weather the storm and get through that potential flooding time period.
Yeah, canned goods, granola bars, cash, medications, all those good things.
Right.
It's on the fire department webpage. But, well, great, terrific. Patrick, thank you for making an appearance on the Steve Hartwig Show. And Steve, thank you again for all the great flooding information. And let's keep our fingers crossed out there that we don't have another big major storm that causes problems. But if one arrives, our crews will be ready. So thanks for watching.